Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to my Politics 2100 channel here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling Biden administration and Dem leadership sham concern, sham morality is an acute danger to democracy. So what I'm trying to do here in this episode is pinpoint what is the core problem in terms of the fundamental beyond the political maneuvering. What is the fundamental psychological and ethical problem or deficiency or lack in the Democratic leadership and in the current administration? Because they have basically they show very little concern for the acute, acutely bad or the acute situation of the American people in terms of what's happening with the pandemic, what's been happening over the last several decades in terms of the impoverishment or the divide between the haves and the have-nots, and also the total lackluster sense of indifference that comes from the Democratic leadership and from the top. If we take also the words of the press secretary as expression of the atmosphere and attitude of the White House itself. So this is kind of a response to a report from the 13th of this month of January. A reporter asked, so the sense is things are going well at the White House. There's no need for change right now, question mark. Jen Psaki, we could certainly propose legislation to see if people support bunny rabbits and ice cream, but that wouldn't be very rewarding for the American people. So this is a snide and just defensive. It sounds like a defensive remark that. But it's in keeping with other offhand comments. For instance, the comment in December that Psaki made about that we could send out free tests but it's not that important. It was an offhand comment that I don't have right in front of me, but I can put a link in the description box to it. But the overall, this is a pattern, and it's as though the administration thought they could just sort of float. They think they can just float through their years in office, that they don't really need to engage fundamentally with the problems they're facing, for instance, the COVID-19 pandemic and income inequality, climate change, that there's nothing burning inside them that pushes them out of their comfort zone, which apparently is very comfortable, okay, and is very self-satisfied, and given the snideness of these remarks from Psaki, that indicates an indifference. This is kind of like the in the Hunger Games, the sort of the court, the richy riches who are lording it over the people outside the gates of the city. I forget exactly what it's called in the Hunger Games, but anyway, that this I have only seen like half a movie of the Hunger Games, but anyway, it's the idea of basically a court that's out of touch with a royal court that's out of touch with the people, okay, and that is insulated, very much like Marie Antoinette and let them eat cake kind of attitude. And uh, now I'm saying this extremely critical stuff because, but I don't want us to leave out of our panorama, our landscape, that the Republican Party is much worse. They're trying to literally end democracy. Okay, they are neo-fascists. They are, and the Democratic Party is in a way luxuriating in the knowledge that they don't have. There's no one right now who's challenging them for the position of the party of democracy, the party of the people. Now they don't act like the party of the people, but there's no. They represent the leftward jamb of the Overton window, and they are, but which is far, far to the right. It's to the right of the center of, let's say, a imaginary political spectrum, where far left is communist and anarchist and so forth and so on, and far right is fascist. We now do have the rightward jam of American politics is pretty much hard up, is close to the edge of what would be our imaginary political spectrum. It's not exactly at full fascist, but it is. It's getting there. Okay, so anyway, the Democratic Party's sham morality and sham concern for the American people that is used in electoral campaigns, is used in fundraising, and used in the gestures of proposing legislation that they know is not going to pass, or not providing the groundwork for instance, the way that Senator Sinema from Arizona expressed, basically said, I'm for the filibuster, but I'm for voting rights as well. So essentially dooming voting rights. Now Sinema is now to the right of the center of the Democratic Party, but she's not far off in terms of her actions. She represents a constituency within the Democratic Party, even though she is very, very unpopular, may be challenged for her seat very soon, and probably will lose it if things hold as they appear to. But she is milking her position now for corporate donations and for basically for serving her donors and ignoring the people of Arizona and the people of the United States more generally. But anyway, but the sham concern, and then the sham morality, and the gestures at being moral and being, let's call it, sometimes woke, and this is a word that again is highly politicized, but some of the impulses of being woke are morality that I share, and so forth and so on. So I'm and many Democrats, what is being, it's being used as a slur, but it does express a concern for other people, for people not like you, for people who are less privileged, and for opposing racism and so forth and so on. It's not a bad thing to be at all. Okay, so and it's being used as a slur by merchants, propaganda merchants on the right wing, who attempt to create a bullying dynamic where they bully people who are sort of concerned about the world, and concerned about reality, and concerned about society pulling itself out of its slide, and wanting to, and our country pulling itself out of its slide, and that mocking, bullying attitude is served by taking words and trying to turn them into slurs or into pejoratives. So anyway, but getting back to this maybe puzzling, maybe not puzzling, listlessness and lack of moral concern, lack of moral fire, lack of even personal fire, personal purpose, and simply drifting, okay, is something that is very, very dangerous right now because of the Republican Party, because of the purposefulness of how the Republican Party is acting. Even though, their leader appears to be a fool, a deluded fool, may be charged with crimes, may be convicted of crimes, I don't. The Democrats seem unable to do something like that, to uh, enforce laws against a white collar criminal, the president being a white collar worker, and or whatever executive, and an inability in a lack of a will, really, a lack of desire to punish other elite people, and to keep this circle of cronies, circle of an elite crony club intact by not going after criminals within that club, and also by loosening the rules of that clubs to make things like, for instance, stock trading by Congress people and senators, to make that legal and to celebrate it as Nancy Pelosi did, to keep the rules very lax, so people don't get booted out of the club or lose status and lose power, maybe lose money by being regulated or even being prosecuted for malfeasance of various kinds, and basically not doing their job. So anyway, the trying to focus on what the lack. There's some now, whether it's intentional or not, and this is where I think one could make two different plausible narratives. And I've been listening to some of Sam Cedar's commentary on this over the last several weeks. He goes on the side of saying this is political incompetence. So why the Democrats are endangering their own political survival, by not going full throttle for voting rights, by allowing Manchin and Sinema to endanger their plans, by not doing a full court press, and by simply throwing your hands up, as Joe Biden did this week about voting rights. They really are playing with fire. And furthermore, Biden not even fully utilizing his executive powers, even in ways that he suggested in his campaign that he would, for instance, like canceling $10,000 worth of student debt. This is all things that don't require Manchin and Sinema, and that are simply on his desk. They could be on his desk. He could generate actions because of his position, and he is someone who shows no desire and interest to be the executive, to be the person who does these executive actions, and if he were in a private business and he were not, it wasn't a family business, that he was a hired CEO, his lack of executive interest would be immediate cause for immediate firing. Okay, because his role is to make decisions and to create plans and to execute the plans and so forth and so on. And he shows just a lack of interest in that, or a lack or a desire, a flickering desire to do these actions, to do actions that would be popular, serve the American people, when it help the political career, his own political career, and those of others, and he's not doing them. And so Cedar talks about this as incompetence, and a case can be made that this is incompetence. On the other hand, we have other data from what Joe Biden has told mega donors, for instance, before the election and so forth and so on. He said nothing will fundamentally change. So the idea that it's incompetence, political incompetence or otherwise, is another argument can be made that no, Biden is, fully aware of what he's doing, and he's consciously torpedoing his own, or at least limiting, torpedoing is too strong a word, but he's trying to limit in a way that fits the interests of his donors, and that's it. Basically trying to limit his successes to a very minor, narrow band, that somehow he can come up with some cosmetic, small improvements that will be a sign that he was not dead when he was president, okay? and that he did certain small things that he can put his name can be applied to, that he can show them and trot them out, and that they can be spun, in an election campaign, either by him or by some successor to him in 2024, and that they can be made into political benefits to the party. So he might think that that speaks actually for incompetence, in that in the sense that he doesn't understand the political moment at all. So anyway, he is imagining that he can create these very, very small, limited victories, rather than having to go the full amount of what he could do, and also the full amount of what is being demanded of him, and what the time demands of him, including the pandemic, which is a very demanding, and it's a external reality that he doesn't control, that none of us control directly, and he needs to look at the data and change his behavior based on, for instance, what the new variant, okay, what it did, what it's doing now, and what government should be doing now, and he's thrown his hands up on that, and created he's created actually. So there's some minor improvement in terms of getting testing out to the American people. This is a recent development, but in general, the response has been listless. It's not been treated as an emergency, as important, and basically it's basically resigning oneself to tens of thousands of deaths from COVID-19, additional deaths, based on a gamble and a lack of concern, and also a political mindset that says, I am going to limit myself to very, very small, marginal victories. So my promise to the donors will be, my being Joe Biden's promise to the donors will be realized, in that I will deliver very small incremental victories, as if this were 1999 or something like that, as if we were in a time that was less crisis ridden and less dire. And so imagining that one can do something incrementally small. I mean, this was something that Barack Obama also believed in, and so it's part of the Democratic Party. It's not just Joe Biden's particular craziness, particular mindset, but anyway, and trying to impose that on the reality of the situation, reality of our economy, reality of the climate, reality of the pandemic, and and it's failing. Okay, it's not working, and people know that, and his popularity shows that it's not working, and he seems at sea. Okay, he also, but he has a long tradition. Okay, of, and this was being discussed. I believe it was on the Majority Report. Anyway, a long history of lying. Okay, and having people, in fact, having his handlers literally trying to stop him from lying about, for instance, that he claims to have been arrested during a civil rights march, or in some way or another, and there's been no record of him being arrested. And he at one point admitted that it wasn't true, but still he's repeated it on other occasions since then. So literally, the man has an impulse to steal the valor of others who actually were arrested or even killed for the cause of civil rights, and to and he has this impulse is hard to repress, and he also has shown, he lies proficiently. And he did that in his debates with Bernie Sanders, and unfortunately Bernie Sanders did not call him on it, and did not, and that's another unfortunate history, another unfortunate aspect of our current politics, in that Sanders calculated that Biden was going to win, and he decided to take it easy on his friend, Joe Biden. And I don't know if they're truly friends or not, and so forth and so on. But it's to me, and I'm not someone who puts Bernie Sanders necessarily on a pedestal, but I have a much higher opinion of Bernie Sanders than any other senator in current, or of in recent history, certainly. Paul Wellstone was an excellent senator. Unfortunately, died too young. That basically this agreement. There was some kind of agreement to help basically in 2020 Joe Biden win, and he didn't expose Biden in that debate. But Biden has seemed to me to be someone who has lied proficiently, and always, and so he's a malarkey. I used the word malarkey in another episode to describe. He used the word malarkey. He said, but no malarkey. But in excuse me. He his advertising, in terms of his denial, it seems to be a defense against the truth, which is that he is someone who relies on malarkey, lying constantly as a major tool for him to get by, to try to navigate basically this game now, particularly now for him, this game of being the good cop in American politics, or the Democratic Party being the good cop, and he's the current head good cop in that, and that he needs to all the while, by being this monitor of the American people for the capitalist class, for the donor class, a monitor in the sense of even a labor camp overseer, okay, and he at the same time needs to create the impression to the American people that he's their friend, that he's with them, that he understands their pain, that he empathizes with them, and which is something that is other Democratic, like famously Bill Clinton says, I feel your pain, and so forth and so on. So, but this is part of the Democratic Party modus operandi, and this is very, very dangerous. So it's extremely dangerous. It's not just like, oh, it's a quirk. Okay, it is so dangerous because this is the reason why right-wing populism. It's the opening for let's call it fascism, neo-fascism, not right-wing populism, fascism, to come in and say, we'll really help you, and but we'll get rid of the bad guys. The bad guys being, the left-wingers, but also the quote-unquote left-wingers, the center-righters who happen to claim to be liberal-ish, the Democrats, but also the bad people being, people who are of different colors or different, who are minorities and, whatever are considered the out group, okay, in different description. And so those are the main scourge of society, and we will, be standing up for the real people, the people who are, in the case of the United States, the, white people who are, living in rural and areas and in some suburban areas and so forth and so on. And we are we will stand up for those people, and, and we won't care about these niceties of, democracy and so forth and so on, and we'll just get things done, because we're the strong people. We're ultra strong. So anyway, the weakness of Joe Biden and the weakness of the Democratic leadership is exactly the contrast that these fascists want. They want opponents. Not only they are not the Democrats who could be pursuing the fascists who have tried to organize a coup after the November 2020 election, okay, where we have more and more evidence that this is the case. The Democrats who, unfortunately, there should be more Republicans. There should be Republicans who are pursuing this attempted coup as well. It's not like it shouldn't be a partisan issue, but to overthrow the will of the people and democratic voting in favor of installing Republicans as the arbiters of who wins elections. Okay, so not only are they in appearance weak, but also in terms of this, they are calling the whole project of a party and a political grouping that cares about people who are different than them, cares about the poor, cares about bringing society together and working on a project of enlightenment, based on the Enlightenment, a sense of moving forward in terms of using science to make people's lives better, and using and having a public purpose to society overall and to the government, to governing. They are calling it into disrepute by being incompetent or being devious or one or the other. It does actually. It matters some, but not entirely, whether it's intentional or whether just simply these are people who have been collected together who are not decisive leaders and not good politicians, in the sense of good also being in the sense of morally good, and filled with the impulse, the public service impulse, as being their top priority among all their priorities, okay, in office and in their political agitation. So anyway, so this is an acute danger to have. It's not simply just game playing and allowing Uncle Joe to be Uncle Joe. He literally has through a series of events is now occupying the most powerful office in the world, probably, and he is playing around with it. He is not serious about it, and his administration shows that they are not serious about the the fate of the American people and what they could be doing for them. And it's not just the administration; it's also the leadership, the congressional leadership of the Democratic Party. They are fairly equivalent in terms of their. I'm talking about Schumer and Pelosi, as well as Biden. They're fairly equivalent in their listlessness and their fecklessness, and they simply are dangerous, are very, very dangerous. Now, they are not as dangerous. The danger that they represent is due, in fact, to this imminent fascist coup that's happening, from the side of the Republicans. So it's not as though I'm making a statement about them being the ultimate baddies. Okay, they are very bad, but they're not the ultimate baddies in our politics. But they are very poor examples of politicians, and they could improve. I think that there is some talent in the Biden administration. They could pull themselves up and do something, and do good things, and do better things, certainly, and they could pull through this crisis. But currently, it seems like the first draft, maybe even the second draft, is just it's an F, or it's a D minus, and it's just not good enough. Okay, it's a failing. It fails the tasks at hand. So I think this is a plea, a long one, for them to get serious, and also for us, when we can come out of our isolation, to get organized and pressure them, the ruling elites to preserve democracy, where we need to, we don't have our hands on certain levers and so forth and so on, but to get real substantial change, at least from the side of government, and also from other sources as well. We can't only be from government, but we need government to be at least involved in some of the changes that we need happening right now, including, of course, voting rights. And this is also, I haven't even brought up the disaster of the Supreme Court and their rulings of this week, and which is a whole, which anyway, that's another video. Anyway, I hope this video was interesting to you, and if you have any thoughts about it, please share them in the comments. Please like it if you like the video, and also please subscribe to this channel for more content similar and different from this. See you in the next video.